All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about something you've definitely heard of, a blood transfusion, but we're looking at it through a really fascinating lens, your immune system, that internal security guard that's on duty 24/7. What happens when it has to decide if a life-saving bag of blood is a friend or a foe? I mean, just think about it for a second. Surgeries, cancer treatments, terrible accidents. The ability to give one person's blood to another saves millions of lives year in and year out. It's something we almost take for granted, but it really is a cornerstone of modern medicine. And here's the twist. For all our medical know-how, sometimes the body on the receiving end just attacks the donated blood. It's a huge paradox, right? The very thing that's supposed to save you can trigger this dangerous internal war. So what's the deal? Well, to figure that out, we have to ask an even bigger question. Yeah, what is it that tells your body that your heart is your heart, but a splinter or a virus is an invader that needs to be kicked out? The answer is pretty cool. It's a super sophisticated ID system that every single one of your cells carries around. It all comes down to this: the Human Leukocyte Antigen system, or HLA for short. The best way to think about it is like a cellular ID card. These are unique protein markers sitting on the surface of your cells. Your immune system is constantly patrolling, checking these HLA IDs. If the ID says self, it moves on. But if it spots an ID it doesn't recognize, well, that's when the alarm bells start ringing. And just how unique are these ID cards? Get a load of this number: 5,212. That's how many different versions or alleles we know of for just one of the major HLA genes. That incredible diversity means your cellular ID is almost one of a kind. Now, on one hand, this is amazing. It makes us, as a species, super resilient against diseases. A single bug would have a hard time wiping all of us out. But here's the catch. It also makes our immune systems extremely picky. And that pickiness is exactly where the trouble starts during a blood transfusion. This whole process has a name: alloimmunization. Basically, it's what happens when your immune system recognizes those foreign HLA markers on the donated cells and decides to launch a full-scale attack, creating antibodies specifically designed to take them out. This isn't just an organ transplant problem, it's a huge deal in transfusions too. So how does this actually go down? It's pretty much a three-step process. First, the transfusion introduces cells with foreign ID cards. Now, fun fact, it's not really the red blood cells causing the problem. It's the contaminating white blood cells in the bag that carry the strongest HLA signals. Second, your immune system spots these non-self IDs and immediately flags them as invaders. And finally, your body goes into production mode, creating a whole army of antibodies to hunt down and destroy any cell with that specific foreign ID. And the consequences of this can be really serious. We're talking about things like high fevers or even acute lung injury. But for patients who need transfusions all the time, like cancer patients, the biggest fear is something called platelet refractoriness. This is when their body gets so good at fighting off donated platelets that future transfusions become totally ineffective. They just don't work anymore. But here's the thing. It's not just a random roll of the dice. Some people are way more likely to develop this kind of immune response than others. Your personal risk is a unique mix of your genes, your overall health, and your medical history. So, what puts you in a higher risk category? Well, it boils down to three main things. First, your genetics. Some HLA types are just naturally more reactive. Second, your current state of health. If you have chronic inflammation from something like sickle cell disease, your immune system is already on high alert. And third, your history. If you've had multiple transfusions before, or even been pregnant, your body has already been exposed to foreign HLA and is primed for a bigger fight next time. Which, of course, leads us to the million-dollar question for doctors. If this is such a big risk for some people, what can we actually do about it? How do we sneak this life-saving blood past the body's bouncer? Well, a few different strategies have been tried. Things like zapping the blood with UVB rays have been, well, pretty ineffective. And other new technologies have had mixed results at best. But there is one strategy that stands out as the absolute gold standard, and that's a process called Leukoreduction. The logic here is actually pretty simple and kind of brilliant. If the white blood cells are the ones triggering the immune system, why not just get rid of them? Leukoreduction is basically a high-tech filter, like a sieve for blood. It physically removes over 99.9% of those troublemaking white blood cells before the blood ever gets to the patient.
And the results? They are absolutely night and day. Before leukoreduction was standard practice, the rate of alloimmunization in patients getting a lot of transfusions could be as high as 45%. After we started using it, that number dropped to as low as 9%. That is a massive, massive improvement for patient safety.
Look, you don't have to take my word for it. The medical consensus is crystal clear. This quote from a major review really sums it up. Filtration, that's leukoreduction, is simply the best tool we have right now to stop this immune reaction in its tracks. So, leukoreduction is our best solution for today. It's powerful, it's effective. But you know how medicine is. It never stands still. Scientists are already looking down the road, figuring out what's next, and the future looks even more personalized. And that future is likely something called precision transfusion. The whole idea is to shift from being reactive, filtering all blood just in case, to being proactive. The goal is to use advanced genetic testing, or genotyping, to map out a patient's exact HLA type ahead of time. That way, we could identify high-risk people from day one, and then very carefully select donor blood that's a near-perfect genetic match, preventing the immune system from ever getting upset in the first place. And that kind of leaves us with this final, really cool thought. We've gone from just matching basic blood types, A, B, O, to understanding this incredibly complex dance of thousands of different cellular ID cards. The next big leap could be a future where a simple genetic test doesn't just find you a compatible donor, but finds you the perfect biological match, making transfusions safer and more effective than we ever thought possible.